In today's video, we will look at how to make fractions equivalent, how to use multiplication or division to rename a fraction. For example, 1/2 equals what fraction out of 6? Let's look at the first fraction, 1/2. The top number in a fraction is known as the numerator. The bottom number in a fraction is known as the denominator. 1/2 can be represented by this circle. Two parts are shown and one part is shaded. The bottom number in a fraction tells us the total number of parts. The top number tells us the amount that we are speaking of. What if we wanted to change 1/2 into a fraction out of 6? What would the numerator be? We have to take the original fraction and imagine changing it, instead of out of 2 pieces, into a shape out of 6 pieces. Now we can see that the part originally represented by 1/2 is now represented by 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3. It's the same amount of space, only divided up into more pieces. Imagine if the first shape were a pizza cut into 2 large pieces, and now the pizza is cut into 6 smaller equal pieces. There are now 3 pieces out of 6, rather than 1 large piece out of 2. Therefore, 1/2 is equal to 3 over 6. Let's try to convert 1/2 into a fraction out of 8. The top number again is the numerator. The bottom number is the denominator. Here's our pictorial representation of 1/2. One circle divided into 2 parts, and one is shaded out of 2. If we wanted to convert 1/2 into a fraction out of 8, what would be the numerator? If we imagine taking that first shape and dividing it into 8 parts rather than 2, we can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces now in the same space where there originally was 1. Therefore, 1 over 2 is equal to 4 out of 8. Let's try 1/3 and convert that into a fraction out of 6. The 1 again is the numerator, the 3 is the denominator, and here's the representation of 1/3. The circle is divided into 3 equal pieces, and one of them is shaded. 1/3 equals how many pieces out of 6? If we take the original shape and instead of dividing it into 3 pieces, we divide it into 6 equal pieces, we can see that the amount of space taken up is now 2 parts. Therefore, 1 over 3 is equal to 2 out of 6. But instead of counting, let's try to use multiplication to do the computation instead. 2 over 5, represented here, 2 pieces shaded out of 5 total pieces, is equal to what fraction out of 10? Well, again, if we convert the shape into 10 parts rather than 5, we can see in the same amount of space, there are 4 pieces that are shaded. Therefore, 2 over 5 equals 4 out of 10. Let's see how to use multiplication to find our answer instead of counting. 2 over 5, represented here. If we want to convert it into a fraction out of 10, we have to figure out what we can multiply 5 by, the denominator by, to give us 10. We know that 5 times 2 is 10, and in order to keep the fraction equivalent, we have to multiply the numerator by the same amount. Therefore, 2 times 2 is 4. Let's try another one. 3 out of 4, or 3/4, represented here, is equal to how many parts out of 8? What fraction out of 8? We know that 4 times 2 gives us 8, and we do the same operation to the numerator. 3 times 2 is 6. And if we count, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. Therefore, 3 over 4 is equal to 6 out of 8. Let's try another one. 1/2, represented here, is equal to what fraction out of 10? We know that 2 times 5 is 10, and we apply that same operation to the numerator. 1 times 5 is 5. Counting them, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of 10. Let's use 4 over 5, represented here, and try to convert it into a fraction out of 10. We have to ask ourselves, how do we get from 5 to 10 through multiplication? Since we already have the 5 as the denominator in the first fraction, and we have a 10 as the denominator in the second fraction, we can figure out how we get from 5 to 10 through multiplication. 5 times 2 is 10. Therefore, 4 times 2 is 8. And if we count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 pieces out of 10 in the second shape. What is 2 over 3, represented here, written as a fraction out of 9? Again, we have both denominators, and so we have to ask ourselves, how do we get from 3 to 9 through multiplication? We know that 3 times 3 is 9, and therefore we do the same operation to the numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. Therefore, 2 over 3 is equivalent to 6 out of 9. And we can count them to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 9. The last one, 1/2, equals what fraction out of 4? We know that 2 times 2 is 4. And we do the same operation to the numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. Therefore, 1/2 is equal to 1, 2 out of 4. Now let's see if we can do this question the same way. 4 out of 8, represented here, 4 parts out of 8 total parts, is equal to what fraction out of 2? We know that if we look in our 8 times tables, we will not see the number 2, so we can't multiply anything by 8 to give us 2. When the denominator in the first fraction is larger than the denominator in the second fraction, this is when we use division. We know that 8 divided by 4 gives us 2, and we use the same operation now in the numerator. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Therefore, 4 over 8 is equal to 1 out of 2. We can see that it is the same amount of space. In this fraction now there are only 2 total parts, and there is 1 part shaded. We use division when the first denominator is larger than the second. Let's use division to make these fractions equivalent. 4 over 6, represented here, is equal to what out of 3? We know that 6 divided by 2 gives us 3, and therefore 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. Therefore, 4 out of 6 is equivalent to 2 out of 3. We see 2 parts out of 3 total parts. Let's try 3 out of 9. 3 parts out of a total of 9 parts. If we want to make that equivalent to what fraction out of 3? How do we get from 9 to 3 through division? 9 divided by 3 gives us 3, and we do the same operation to the numerator. 3 divided by 3 equals 1. We have 1 part out of 3 parts. Therefore, 3 out of 9 is equal to 1 out of 3. Let's try 5 out of 10, represented here with 5 parts out of a total of 10 parts, equals what fraction out of 2? We know 10 divided by 5 gives us 2, and we have to perform the same operation to the numerator. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Therefore, we have 1 part out of 2. 5 out of 10 is equal to 1 out of 2. So to review, we can use multiplication when we are trying to convert one fraction into another. If the first denominator is smaller than the second, we can check to see whether we can use multiplication to go from the first denominator to the second. In this case, 4 times 2 gives us 8. We perform the same operation to the numerator, and so 3 times 2 gives us 6. We can see 3 over 4, 3 pieces out of a total of 4 pieces, is equal to 6 pieces out of 8 pieces. And if we look at the color that's shaded, it is the exact same amount of space. We've only divided the shape into more pieces. Now let's look at how to use division. If we have 6 out of 8, and we want to convert that into a fraction out of 4, we notice that the first denominator of 8 is larger than the second denominator of 4. When this is the case, we have to figure out what we can divide that number by to give us the second number. We know that 8 divided by 2 is 4, and we perform the same operation to the numerator. 6 divided by 2 is 3. We can see that we have 6 pieces out of a total of 8 parts. And here we have 1, 2, 3 pieces out of a total of 4 parts. And now we've solved the mystery of how to make fractions equivalent.